and then 16 to 18.
Now, if you have a look at that Victorian record set by Mac Horton for the men's, that is, not the women's, but he went 14.44 for a 1500.
Pretty solid swim there. As it's Oliver McCormack, who's off to the nice, strong start. So Oliver McCormack is a 14-year-old, so he's competing in the 14-15 boys event. And this first 100, this is the free 100.
Yeah, it is. Free hit. Get out there, relax. You feel pretty good after the first 100 normally. Oh, this will be all right.
This will be easy. It is important to make sure it is a relaxed, speedy 100, though. You can't overwork it, otherwise you'll definitely pay for it later on.
Look, and also coaches as well talk about the beauty of a 15 is that there's so much room for improvement. Is that, you know, let's say you do a 1500 at a meet throughout the season and you really didn't work your turns very well. Well, then the next time you do race it, you've got, 28 turns it is, I think it is, to then practice that.
You can see that you haven't done a 1500 before.
29 turns, I think.
30 laps, so yeah.
29 turns, yeah. But, yeah, you got more room to fix up these little errors that you can make.
Okay, so Oliver McCormack's first 100, that was the free hit in that first 100. So now, as we move on to our second 100, this is where we're going to start to establish our rhythm and the speed that we want to hold for the remaining 1400 metres. So we'll start to take a little bit of note of the times these swimmers are posting as they go through the hundreds to try and work out what they're able to maintain, and then we'll be able to work out what time they're likely to swim as they're going through.
I was also speaking to a lot of coaches about 1500s when they get their swimmers to do it, that they call it the 3-500 blocks, that you break it down to 3 500s, and then it's about sort of building each of those 500s. And so Oliver McCormack leading through there at 2:17. Probably splitting about 109s there, I think.
That was a 111, that 100. And so we'll sort of see how we settle down. So for those of you playing along at home who's trying to work out how your friend, family member is going, we're not going to be quite this fast, but the 15-minute mark is 100 per 100. 16-minute mark, 104. 17-minute mark, 108. 18-minute mark, 112. That's a good way to sort of give yourself an indication of what speed these athletes are looking to maintain as they go through this 1500. So
these guys, sorry Nick, I was going to say these guys in training would be all about holding that certain pace per 100. They'd be practicing they might do 30, 50s holding that certain pace, or 15 100s on a cycle at training, holding a certain stroke count at a certain rate too. Now that's the other big thing is stroke rate per 100.
So that was a 113 100 there from Oliver, with Oliver's entry time being a 19.00. So that means he's settled into a rhythm faster than what he needs to swim a personal best.
Yeah, you'd expect he's going to try and go out hard here in this first 500, and can he then build the next 2 500s after this?
So especially with our 14-year-olds in this field, which we have a number in this heat, they probably haven't done that many 1500s.
No.
So it's still a learning experience, this event, and learning how to pace it and learning how to race it. They may have only done 1 or 2. But he is looking really long, relaxed and smooth. So we have these mixed events, which is good in these 1500 metre events, because it means that more of our athletes are getting to race closer
to their time.
And yeah, so their competition is closer in the pool with them.
Yeah.
Rather than if we split them into their individual age groups, we tend to spread out and not have that direct head-to-head competition.
Well, there's nothing more typical than being in a 1500 and you've got no one around you to pace off. I think it's really hard swimming 30 laps of a long course pool and you're in lane 8 or lane 9 or lane 7 and there's no one around you, you've got to try and work out, well, how fast do I need to go?
So once again, it's a 1:13 there from Oliver, and he's holding that speed nice. So he's obviously, for him, that's his pace that he settled into, that 1:13, and we'll see how long he can maintain it through this 1500. We'll also check in on a few of our other athletes as we're going through to see how they're going with their pacing splits.
Now, Nick, with the 15 as well, it's really important about that stroke count. You know, these guys are probably looking at holding, they would have practiced it too, but did you ever have a sort of stroke count range that you always wanted to hold if you ever did a 15 from memory?
So I can remember when I did my 1500s as a 16-year-old.
It's a while ago now.
Yes, yes, it is a while ago, Tim. My stroke rate after the first 50 did not change for the entire 1500.
That's pretty good.
And so it's all about settling into that nice rhythm and then being able to maintain it.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's not changing towards the end of the race as the effort increases. But as you fatigue, it's harder to keep that tempo the same.
Definitely, that's right. I think, you know, as those arms, they start to get heavier and heavier, your shoulders start to burn, the lats start to burn.
Yes, I think if my memory serves me correctly, or something like my stroke rate was something like 32 or 34 for the entire 1500. And yeah, my stroke count sitting on that similar stroke count throughout the 1500s.
Well, I do remember years ago watching Mac Horton do a 1500, and he would get in. I think he went out into 57 his first 100, and then he just held 59s or 100 per 100 for the next 14 100s.
It was very
Incredible.
impressive to watch. But Oliver is continuing to look really good now, and Emma's starting to pull clear of the rest of the field to sitting in second. Emma is a 17-year-old, so she is competing in the girls 16 to 18 division of this 1500. So Emma there was through in a 1:13, matching Oliver there. So Oliver got a little bit of a head start through the first couple of 100, but now those two are starting to hold those 1:13s. So across this field here, so we've got Aiden, who's competing in that 14-15 division. We've got Mia Hoskins, who's in the women's 14-15 division. Hugh Munro is in the boys 14-15s. Emma Harrison, as we just spoke about, the girls 16 to 18. Joel Pollard is in the boys 14-15. Sarah Cartel is in the women's 14-15. And then the remaining boys are all 14-year-olds in this side of the pool. So they're in that 14, 15-year-old age group. As Oliver turns through here in an 8:23, sitting right on his speed once more.
Just having a chat with one of our great guys from Big Voice here, Liam. He's doing a great job of all of our camera work and our media work from in the war room inside, just behind our starter blocks here. So you've got to thank them as well for their efforts they've put in over the last 5 days. It's a huge meet. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it is. It's a massive meet through from parents, officials, some Victoria staff. There's just hundreds.
Coaches.
Yeah, coaches. There's hundreds of people who put this meet together to make it happen. So Oliver is still maintaining those 1:13 second 100s here. Emma let that last one slip out to a 1:14, so we'll see what she can manage here as we see Mia and Hugh in lane 0 and 1 go through and having a nice tight battle. As we were speaking about earlier, that cross-gender, cross-age group races, they're now having someone to pace themselves through this 1500 as Oliver turns through in a 9:36 there.
You can see too with these guys during a 15 how they'll breathe to one side, and that arm that enters the water when they on that breathing arm, they really stretch out that arm there. And it's really focusing on that efficiency as that hand enters the water. You're really trying to stretch out that distance and maximise that length.
So Oliver maintaining those 113s and Emma sort of settling into that 114 range, which is probably why Joel Pollard is starting to gain a little bit of ground back on Emma as he's sort of being able to hold those 113 highs for the last few 100s. So those three have started to pull clear of the rest of the field here in what is being referred to as Heat 2 of our 1500.
So Nick, as well, I know we spoke a little bit about that free pace off a wall. Did you find when you did the 1500 back in the day, you just do one dolphin kick off, or would you just push off and glide, or what was your sort of go-to move?
Yeah, so push off, and obviously I am quite old, so dolphin kicks almost weren't a thing back then. But it was you weren't working the underwater phase for distance, but you were making sure that it was a nice strong push and maybe one or two kicks and then coming up with speed and making sure as you broke through the surface of the water, you did accelerate your feet. So you popped up and came up with speed to set yourself up for the up.
Try and use that momentum off the wall to get that speed to start. Yep.
So when we get to Heat 4 of this event, we'll see a really good example of that is Mackenzie Hunter. She, during the middle of her races, she always trails her feet.
Yep.
But in and out of that turn, she accelerates, especially popping up, accelerates, nice 6-speed kick out of the wall to get us all set, ready to go for that next 50. So that was a 112.9 there from Cameron.
I think with these guys too, in the ladder heats, when they get to it, who most likely will be racing this race at Nationals coming up in a couple of weeks' time, but the training work that these guys do is going to be a lot more around that longer distance stuff, repeated efforts at lower intensity with shorter rest.
Yeah, if you asked any of these athletes to maintain a speed that they're swimming now and gave them 30, 40 seconds rest between each 50 or each 100, they'd have no trouble. It's being able to do it with only getting 5, 10 seconds rest. That's what they will be doing in training to be able to replicate what they need to be able to do in a race.
Yeah, I think for them it's about a certain aerobic area, a certain zone they want their athletes to hit up to. Because obviously when you work too high of that aerobic zone, or you start going into an anaerobic area where you start to lose a bit of that oxygen. So these guys would be working at training and working at the hardest sort of rate that they can with the least amount of energy.
Yeah, so the first couple of repeats should feel nice and easy.
Yeah.
As the first few hundred of this 1500 would have. But as they go on through those repeats in training, that's where it starts to get challenging.
Yeah, exactly right. I think I have heard from a few distance swimmers that they actually find sometimes the first one or two is a little bit hard, but then once they actually get in a bit of a rhythm, and when they get to those 14, 15, 16, even up to 30 times they might do something like this, they actually find it can be a little bit easier because they've got into that groove and they know how many strokes they're doing, then they can sit on it. As
we see Oliver, so just working that push and glide off the wall, not worrying so much about his dolphins as he moves through, with now Joel Pollard taking over second. So again, using those Hawkeye cameras to our advantage here on the coverage, as Oliver's looking nice and smooth. His tempo hasn't changed since that opening 200. He's keeping his legs going, tight streamline off the wall, not worrying about his underwater so much, just popping up and keeping that steady kick going. So Abdul's joined us back in the commentary chair as we start to get towards the concluding stages here in Heat 2.
Yeah. I was overhearing Tim talk about holding a pace for the whole 1500, and it's just about, you said it's going to be hard for the first 200, and that's the area where you sort of set the pace, and then after that it sort of becomes a little bit easier, I guess.
It sort of becomes automatic in some respects, but as we get closer to the 1,000 mark, that's when you start to feel like you need to put more effort in to maintain that speed. Oliver, again, sitting at a 1:13.0 for that last 100. Doing a fantastic job. Joel Pollard's also done a really good job. Started off a little bit steadier in the opening portion of this race, but has started to hold that speed as well. Oliver's starting to inch away from him, but not compared to that first 200. He's probably lost 7 or 8 metres in that first 200 and only really half a metre per 100 since then.
Yeah. And it is hard to gauge sort of, say you add 20 seconds at the end of the 1500. Well, it's not really, that bad compared to, that's just equivalent to a second slower in each 100. So
Exactly.
it is hard to gauge sometimes. But I also do feel like once you get to the 1,000 metre mark and you feel like you push, just like you said, you've already got into a rhythm, and if you start, exerting a lot more effort, you might get tired a lot more quicker. You might actually be slower by the end.
Yeah, it is hard to work on that pace change. Sometimes, as you go to change your pace, it almost hurts even more and results in you slowing down. Again, a 1:12.9 there from Oliver with 200 metres left to swim here. As again, we watch our swimmers through their turns with that Hawkeye camera. But is nice, strong, long swimming here from Oliver as he leads and has a quick glance up at that lap counter. You saw him look forward slightly there just to check how far he had to go. So when he hit that wall, then he had 3 laps to go. That means 150 metres. You see the lap counter change the lap. So next time he comes back, he'll see 1 to go. But before then, he's going to get the whistle when he's got 100 metres to go. So he's doing a really good job keeping that kick going. If anything, he slightly increased his tempo of his kick in this last 200. So he's hearing the best sight in distance swimming, the whistle with 100 to go. As he turns through here. And again, a 112 high, so he's was settling in those 113s. He's dropped in a few 112s, and let's see what he can pull out in this last 100.
Yeah, he's definitely holding out well. I think his pace is going to stay the same because he's holding at 112 for what was a few hundreds there. So to go a lot quicker than that, there might be a risk there of actually going slower. But he is looking strong. Last 50 to go. So he just touched in at a 17:29. His seated time is a 9:10.
You can see he's really trying to increase that kick rate in this last 100. He's really trying to make sure it's a consistent 6-beat kick as he's upping his tempo in this last 25, as he's now going to work towards the wall and absolutely annihilate his personal best. At entry time of 19:00.97, and he's going to swim very close to 18 minutes as he comes in 18.
4 minute down.
0337. So coming into the wall next is his direct competitor in that 14-15 year age group, Joel Pollard. Is also going to take a nice chunk out of his personal best in an 18:17. Touching the wall third over in lane 0 is Aidan McGee.
It is huge. Improvements of like 1 minute.
So far everyone to the wall has set a personal best. So that's great to see from our distance swimmers. They've had to wait till day 5 of the meet to tackle this 1500 metres as Mia Horskins comes in and also takes off nearly 10 seconds from her entry time. As Hugo Munro from South Gippsland Bass finishes, and Sarah Cowtell comes into the wall to round out heat 2 of our 1500. So good job there from Oliver McCormack to take out our opening heat of our reseeded mixed 14 to 18 1500.